Where do India-US relationship really stand after the Obama administration? What is to be expected in the Donald Trump era? To talk about all of this on this special broadcast, I am joined by Nisha Biswal, the outgoing US Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia. She's joining us via Skype from Washington, D.C. You know, Nisha, you've been so closely involved with this region, with India in particular, of course, you know, with your roots here. When you look back today, what to you is the biggest highlight of the India-US relationship currently, especially during the Obama administration?
Well, certainly, you know, the relationship is built on the premise of very strong fundamentals, the fundamentals of our values, of our interests, of our goals and our objectives. But in every relationship, those fundamentals are supplemented then by kind of the personalities in both governments that will then bring the relationship closer together. And we have had just an extraordinary time with the chemistry and the relationship between our president, President Obama, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And so one of the highlights for me was when President Obama went to India as chief guest for Republic Day. It was a historic moment, and it really, I think, captured the aspirations of both people of what this relation should be. And it was symbolic in that sense, but it also, I think, went beyond symbolism to really reimagine and rethink what the U.S.-India relationship would be moving forward.
Will India continue to enjoy a bipartisan support?
I believe it will. I think that these, the foundational agreements and the defense pact, these have transcended administrations. We have seen consistency and ambition in the U.S.-India relationship through successive U.S. administrations, including during the tenure of President Bush, during the tenure of President Clinton, and then obviously over the past 8 years under the leadership of President Obama. We've seen the support on a bipartisan basis from the U.S. Congress. And so I absolutely believe that the agreements that have been reached between the United States and India, not only will they be standing in the next administration, I think that they will be built upon and advanced by the next team that comes in. So I'm optimistic about that.
But in terms of Washington, D.C.'s expectations from India, was there at any point a certain level of frustration or disappointment, especially on the way the trade front was happening with India, asking for more access to India and also operationalizing of the civil nuclear agreement? Was there some level of frustration that your administration and you personally had to sort of face?
Sure, of course there was. But, in what great power relationship do we not have areas of frustration, areas of contention or tension? Are bound to be on difficult issues like trade. Trade is a contentious issue in the United States. It's a complicated and politically sensitive issue in the United States, and it is likewise, similarly, a contentious issue in India. But what I have to say is, our two economies will both benefit as we work through these issues and create greater opportunities for collaboration, for integration, for investing in each other's societies and economies.
One of the particular issues that I would like to delve upon a little bit, the Mumbai attack scenario. 2008, once the Mumbai attacks happened, we saw, of course, US citizens died in those attacks. Initially, there was a lot of international cry on it, asking for justice. But somehow the feeling in New Delhi was that after a point, US stopped using its leverage on Pakistan to ensure that the perpetrators were actually punished.
Well, I think we continue to use our relationship, our influence, our leverage, as you put it, to advance these issues. We have called consistently and repeatedly, and do so to this day, that the Mumbai attackers be brought to justice. We have made available individuals in our own custody for deposition and for interrogation to try to advance that. And, believe that this is something that Pakistan needs to do for its own interests and for its own sake, so that it can stand with the community of nations as a nation that will bring to justice perpetrators of terrorism and stand with the community of nations as a nation that will advance the rule of law. I think that that is something that we continue to engage with our counterparts in Pakistan on, and I believe that it will be something that the next administration will also put.
But Pakistan, despite all the dossiers that India handed, continued to maintain that there was no evidence against Hafiz Saeed. Was that a view that US shared too?
Well, we certainly believe that action needs to be taken against these individuals. The United States has itself declared Hafiz Saeed as an individual on whom we have placed a rewards for justice for information that can lead to arrest and conviction. And we have identified that a number of groups and individuals bear responsibility. Now, what we have on the basis of intelligence is different from evidence that is needed in a court of law. We believe that that evidence does need to come forward, and we are continue to be committed to working with India and with Pakistan to collaborate to collect that evidence and to pursue justice for the victims of the Mumbai attacks.
There's a recent audio clip that's come out where Hafiz Saeed can actually be heard boasting about the Lashkar-e-Tayyiba's attack on the GREF camp in Akhnur sector and of having claimed lives. So when these evidences are very much there, why ask for, a bounty to seek more evidence? You think it's a lack of political will on the part of Pakistan?
Well, there's clearly, I can't speak for the government of Pakistan on the decisions that are made by that government. But what I can say is that by designating Hafiz Saeed and by creating rewards for justice designation on him, we are making very publicly clear and unequivocally clear about what we deem to be his role in these attacks. And I think that it's important for us to be able to provide that clarity. I think had we not done that, then the question you would be asking me is why hasn't the United States designated him or taken some action? And so, it may not yet have resulted in the outcome that we're seeking in terms of justice for those attacks, but it is an important step in that process.
People like Hafiz Saeed, terrorists like Hafiz Saeed or Masood Azhar, who has been blamed by India to be the mastermind behind the Pathankot attacks that happened just days after Narendra Modi made that friendly gesture of an unscheduled stop in Lahore. These people, managed to roam around free. So is India well within its capacity then to carry on further surgical strikes in future if needed, like the one it did?
Well, I'm not going to speak to the decisions and the actions that the government of India makes, but what I will say is, for all of us, there is a need to balance. The actions that are necessary to protect our people and the actions that are necessary to maintain stability and security on the broader range. And I think the government of India has sought to act in a measured way and has sought to act in a way that tries to both take action when it's needed, but also prevent escalation of those actions. And I think that it's been a very responsible approach and calibrated approach, and I have confidence that that will continue to be the case. These are absolutely frustrating and alarming to see the continuation of terrorism, not just in the region, but really it's a problem of global magnitude. And there are networks that are regionally based and there are networks that are globally based. It is not a problem that will be solved in a single action or in a short duration, but something that's going to require concerted effort and cooperation amongst the community of nations.
In the past, perhaps, when Washington, D.C. would have dialed a panic button if there was an escalation of tension, this time when Susan Rice actually spoke to NSA Ajit Doval, the message was that India is within its right to take necessary action if required.
I do understand that there is a limit to what the Indian people and the Indian government can sustain in terms of terrorist attacks, and the need for the government of India to be able to defend its interests and to defend its people. I think that what you heard from Ambassador Ambassador Rice, what you heard from Secretary Kerry and from the President himself, is an understanding of that growing concern and frustration,
Right.
but also a continued urging that ultimately the path to peace is not kinetic. The path to peace is through dialogue, and I know that that is something that Prime Minister Modi has repeatedly said he is open to and interested in advancing. And I know we have heard the same from Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif.
Well, we're just slipping into a short break right now, but Nisha Biswal continues to be with us live and exclusive on this special broadcast. On the other side, we'll try and ask her about India's entry bid into the nuclear suppliers group and that stumbling block called China, as well as what to expect from the man himself, Donald Trump. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching India Today. I'm Smita Sharma, and we are joined on the broadcast from Washington, D.C. by outgoing U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, Nisha Biswal. Moving to another subject, in fact, where the India and US actually worked very closely, the nuclear suppliers group and India's entry into it. Now, in 2008, when the waiver was granted to India ahead of that civil nuclear cooperation, we saw the amount of diplomatic heavyweight lifting that US did. But somewhere during the current rounds of negotiation with the NSG, be it the Seoul plenary session, do you think situation has changed that for the US to do so much of a diplomatic spade work is perhaps not possible at the moment on behalf of India?
I don't think that that's accurate. The United States has worked very, very closely with India in advancing India's case for membership in the nuclear suppliers group. The President has said repeatedly and unequivocally that we believe that India is ready and should become a member of the NSG. And we have engaged alongside India in doing the spade work, as you put it, with the members of the NSG to make the case for India's membership. Now, they're including it at the level of the President, the Secretary, and just a whole host of senior officials throughout our government who have worked diligently and intensively on that. Now, there are issues within the NSG membership that need to be addressed, and there are concerns on the framework around which a non-NPT signatory would be allowed membership. And those are issues that I think are working towards resolution, but they are complicated. They involve very strongly held and long-standing views of a number of countries. And I think those countries are increasingly becoming more comfortable and see the path forward. So I'm hopeful that in the next administration that these issues will bear fruit, these efforts will bear fruit, and that we will soon see the day.
India has been facing the Chinese stumbling block on several fronts, be it that resolution on Masood Azhar, the Security Council Security Committee, where it has the support of the other sponsors, or in the neighborhood where the sense is that, essentially China is not all about economic development in the neighborhood. It's about containing India policy. Because you've been involved in the region, what was your assessment of the Chinese presence, especially in this region?
Well, I think with respect to the 1267 committee, we were very disappointed that China blocked that designation. We believe that China, as well as all the rest of us, need to act and stand together to combat terrorism, to take tough stances to address the sources of those terrorist activities. And I think that the evidence has been compelling. So we were disappointed that China took the step that it took. China will increasingly need to defend its actions and need to decide where it stands with respect to terrorism and where it stands with respect to security and stability across South and Central Asia and across Asia as a whole. So China is gonna feel that pressure increasingly as it moves forward. Look, all of us want to see and have a constructive, a positive relationship with China. We want to see China play a constructive role in the region and around the world. China is obviously a very, very important country, economically, militarily, strategically, very important country, and with much, much to contribute. And so we are not looking to see further confrontation or tension with China, either between the United States and China or between India
Right.
and China and its other neighbors and partners.
On the issue of H-1B visas, on the issue of L-1 visas, the U.S., in fact, Attorney General designate Jeff Sessions told a Senate committee that they would take measures to curtail the misuse of these visas. Is this something that the Indian technology industry needs to be worried about with the new administration going forward?
Well, I think first of all, let me say that by and large, I think that the H-1B visas and the L-1 visas have been an important instrument through which Indian companies have been able to expand their cooperation and collaboration with the United States and with American companies. And I think and no country has benefited more from those categories of visas. So I think that will continue to be an important aspect. There's an obligation by the companies that use those visa categories to not abuse them. And we have seen that there have been abuses of H-1B visas, and we have seen that is detrimental both to the companies and to the larger program. Now, both countries stand more to gain by investing in each other, by collaborating with each other, and by creating opportunity in each other's countries. There are over 100,000 jobs here in the United States that have been created through Indian investment in the U.S.
Right.
And certainly U.S. investment in India has been responsible for hundreds of thousands of jobs as well.
And, you know, the incoming person who will be, in fact, in charge of State Department will be Rex Tillerson, somebody who's been an outsider to the political corridors. Any thoughts on how do you see Mr. Tillerson shape up, what happens in the State Department in the future?
Well, certainly the Secretary-designate, Mr. Tillerson, is someone who is well familiar with international engagement. He is a global figure and has had dealings with a very wide range of countries, of governments, and is pretty savvy, I think, in that sense. He has a pretty solid reputation as a manager. This is a very different position than what he has held in the private sector. And there are different driving imperatives, and there are different qualities and different interests and different values that inform the job of the Secretary of State and the advancing of U.S. foreign policy and U.S. National interest.
But President Donald Trump, he's already run into several controversies. His campaign was tipped to be one built on fear and hate. In the press conference, he's run into rough weather with the press. Are there apprehensions amongst the Democrats that there will be several areas of conflicts of interest that the presidency might see in the days to come?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of apprehensions, not only amongst Democrats, but amongst the American people about some of the statements that were made in the campaign and frankly, since the election. What I say to people is, it is one thing to be fearful and anxious. We have to act on the basis of facts. And what I am waiting to see is if the president-elect is a president that brings the country together, that stands for the interests and the values that have long defined the United States, and that acts as president for all Americans. There are many in the immigrant communities across the country who right now have some concern about what the policies will be and how it will impact them.
So finally, Nisha, just one last question. I know your children are thanking Mr. Donald Trump because now they have their mother back. But what lies ahead for you personally and professionally in the days to come?
Well, I tell you, the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my children to Disney World, and we're gonna actually go for this long deferred family vacation and spend a little bit of time with Mickey and Donald, and then we will think about what comes next for us as a family and for me professionally.
Many thanks for joining us, sparing time for this conversation, this candid and frank conversation exclusively with India Today.